The drama begins by introducing our two male leads, Ijo and Junghan. Junghan is asleep on the couch when Ijo quietly looks at him with affection and gently kisses him. Just then, Junghan wakes up and immediately asks, "What are you doing?" The story then takes us back 1 week earlier. We see Ijo attending his father's funeral, and just like today, it is pouring rain. During the funeral, Ijo's older brother, Jong-in, brutally beats him and yells that Ijo should never have been born. He blames Ijo for their mother's death and now their father's death as well. After that, Jong-in says he wants to cut all ties with Ijo. Jonghan is standing nearby watching everything. He seems to be their cousin who came to attend his uncle's funeral. Jonghan tries to stop Jong-in and tells him that beating Ijo will solve nothing, but Jong-in refuses to listen. Instead, he orders Ijo to bring him all of their father's property documents. Ijo falls to his knees, grabs Jong-in's legs, and begs him not to fight, but Jong-in ignores him because he believes Ijo is a liar. He walks away, leaving Ijo behind. Watching everything, Jonghan thinks Ijo is an idiot for not even trying to fight back. A moment later, Ijo notices Jonghan, gives him a smile, and suddenly collapses. The scene returns to the present, where Jonghan pushes Ijo away and asks what he was trying to do. Ijo stays silent, so Jonghan says that he only let Ijo stay at his house because he felt sorry for him, yet he's acting like this? He tells Ijo to leave his house by the next day or he will kill him. After saying that, Jonghan goes back to his room. The following morning, Jonghan comes downstairs and notices that Ijo's bedroom door is wide open. Thinking Ijo ignored his warning, he angrily walks inside, only to find Ijo suffering from severe stomach pain and barely able to move. Panicked, Jonghan quickly rushes him to the hospital. When Ijo finally wakes up, he sees Jonghan asleep beside his hospital bed. Ijo gently reaches out and strokes Jonghan's hair, but just then, the doctor walks in, so Ijo quickly pretends to be asleep. Jonghan wakes up and asks the doctor how Ijo's surgery went. Hearing that, Ijo becomes shocked and asks, "What surgery?" The doctor explains that Ijo had kidney stones and had to undergo emergency surgery. A flashback shows that when Ijo arrived at the hospital, he was already in terrible condition. The doctor had warned Jonghan that he had no idea how Ijo was enduring such intense pain, but without surgery, Ijo could die. Jonghan immediately signed the consent form and promised to pay all the medical expenses. Back in the present, Ijo asks who paid the bill and how much it cost. Jonghan tells him the surgery cost 4 million won. Hearing that, Ijo becomes even more worried and says he doesn't have that kind of money and has no idea how he can repay him. Jonghan replies that the only thing Ijo has left is his body, so he should figure out for himself how to pay back the debt. As Jonghan starts to leave, Ijo apologizes for what happened the previous day. Jonghan says they should just pretend that nothing ever happened between them. Ijo agrees and asks if Jonghan will come visit him again. But Jonghan refuses and tells him to come back on his own after he is discharged. A few days later, Ijo returns home from the hospital and finds Jonghan already there. Ijo says Jonghan knew he was being discharged today, yet he still didn't come to pick him up. Jonghan replies that he stayed home for that exact reason. Hearing that, Ijo becomes extremely happy, thinking Jonghan stayed home because of him. But Jonghan quickly ruins the moment by saying it's only because it's the weekend and he has the day off. Then he tells Ijo to get some rest before going to his own room. However, Ijo notices that the house is very messy, so despite still being in pain, he cleans the entire house and prepares dinner before inviting Jonghan to eat. Jonghan notices how spotless the house looks and praises Ijo, saying he's actually good at this kind of work. Ijo reminds him that Jonghan once said he could repay the debt with his body, so this is the only way he can be useful. Jonghan says that's a good point, but after tasting the food Ijo made, he immediately hates it. He tells Ijo to stay out of the kitchen from now on or he'll kill him. Ijo asks if the food is really that bad. Jonghan simply says yes. A little later, Jonghan receives a call from his friend Jae, inviting him to dinner, so he takes Ijo along. Seeing them together, Jae is shocked and asks if they're really living under the same roof. Ijo happily says yes. Jae says that's unbelievable because Jonghan has always preferred living alone. When he finds out that Jonghan himself invited Ijo to stay with him, he becomes even more surprised. A flashback reveals that while Ijo was looking for a place to live, he showed Jonghan a tiny, run-down apartment. Seeing how terrible it was, Jonghan told Ijo he wasn't staying there and invited him to move into his own house instead. Back in the present, Jonghan tells Jae that he only helped Ijo because he felt sorry for him. Jae then suggests giving Ijo a job at Jonghan's company since Jonghan is the CEO's son. Jonghan immediately glares at him and tells him to be quiet. Then Jae tells Ijo that Jonghan is extremely popular with women. Ijo smiles and says that's only natural because Jonghan is very handsome. Feeling awkward, Jonghan goes outside with Jae for a cigarette. Jae tells Jonghan that his cousin is incredibly cute and far too innocent for people their age. Jonghan replies that if Jae likes Ijo that much, he should just take him home instead. Jae jokes that it isn't a bad idea, and Jonghan quietly watches Ijo through the window. Afterwards, they go back inside, and both Jonghan and Jae drink quite a lot. Eventually, Jae leaves, and Ijo helps the drunk Jonghan back home. At the restaurant, Ijo takes money out of Jonghan's pocket to pay the bill before bringing him home safely. Since Ijo is still suffering from stomach pain, Jonghan says the pain must be because of him. He takes out fresh bandages, sits Ijo on the couch, lifts his shirt, and carefully changes the dressing on his wound. As they stare at each other into each other's eyes, Jonghan slowly leans closer. Ijo tells him that he's drunk, but Jonghan tells him to be quiet and suddenly kisses him. The next morning, Jonghan wakes up with a terrible headache. He walks into the kitchen for some water, but the moment he sees Ijo, he jumps in shock and asks, "What are you doing there?" Ijo happily tells him that he finally got a job and is leaving for work today, but before that, he worked hard to make soup for him. Jonghan sits down and tastes the soup, and this time he actually likes it. He tells Ijo that he's really good at taking care of household chores. Then he asks Ijo to bring him a pen and paper and tells him to write a contract saying, "I, Ijo, give Jonghan the rights to use my body," meaning Ijo will cook, clean, and do all the housework, and Jonghan will pay him 100,000 won every month. Ijo says he could find another job instead, but Jonghan replies that he doubts Ijo's new job will ever pay that much. In the end, Ijo signs the contract. Just before leaving for work, Jonghan notices a hotel takeout bag sitting in the kitchen. He looks at Ijo angrily and asks, "Didn't you say you made the soup yourself?" Ijo quickly makes an excuse by saying he only added some extra ingredients to it. Jonghan doesn't respond and simply leaves. Before he walks out, Ijo stops him and asks if he remembers what happened the previous night. Jonghan has no idea what Ijo is talking about, so Ijo quietly lets him leave without saying anything else. At the office, two female employees notice Jonghan and start talking about how handsome he is. They wonder if he's single and want to go talk to him, but Jonghan simply puts on his earphones to ignore them. Just then, he receives another message from Ijo asking, "Do you really not remember anything?" Jonghan starts wondering what Ijo is talking about. Later, some of his coworkers invite him out for coffee. At first, Jonghan refuses, but one of them quietly tells him that they know he doesn't want anyone to find out that he is the CEO's son, so he should come along to avoid raising suspicion. Jonghan agrees and goes with them. While ordering coffee at the company cafe, he's surprised to see Ijo working in their cafe. That's when he realizes Ijo got a job at the cafe inside his own company. Jonghan doesn't say anything and quietly watches Ijo from his table. A little later, one of the women with them accidentally spills coffee on her clothes and another coworker helps clean it up. Watching them unexpectedly reminds Jonghan of what happened the previous night. The memory makes him extremely embarrassed, so he immediately leaves the cafe and wonders what he was thinking. That evening, Jonghan comes home carrying takeout for dinner. Ijo quickly apologizes and says he had no idea the cafe belonged to Jonghan's company because they were the ones who accepted his job application. Jonghan tells him it's fine and asks him to serve the food. Ijo says he was already cooking, but Jonghan reminds him that he already told him not to cook anymore. Feeling nervous, Ijo quietly sits down and eats the takeout with him. During dinner, Jonghan admits that he finally remembered what happened the previous night. Ijo stays calm, so Jonghan asks if they slept together. Ijo tells him that nothing like that happened because Jonghan fell asleep first. Jonghan then asks if Ijo didn't stop him when he tried to kiss him. Ijo honestly admits that he likes Jonghan. Feeling guilty, Jonghan apologizes and says he did something wrong, so he'll do whatever Ijo wants to make up for it. Ijo jokingly tells him to kiss him. Jonghan stands up and walks toward him, but Ijo quickly steps back. Confused, Jonghan says Ijo was the one who asked for it. Ijo smiles and says he hasn't brushed his teeth yet. Jonghan tells him to go brush first. After Ijo gets ready, Jonghan gives him a brief kiss, then immediately tells him to forget everything that happened because it doesn't mean anything from his side. Ijo quietly accepts his answer. The next morning, Jonghan gets ready for work and notices that Ijo has already left the house. At the office, while waiting for the elevator, he overhears two employees saying that Ijo and the cafe manager, Suyeon, look really good together and even came to work together that morning. Hearing that makes Jonghan unexpectedly jealous. Instead of going straight to his office, he heads to the cafe, where he sees Ijo happily talking with Suyeon. His jealousy grows even stronger. Jonghan places a very large order and hands Ijo his bank card to pay. When Ijo tries to return the card, Jonghan purposely tells him to keep it, saying the cafe probably doesn't pay him much anyway. Then he tells Suyeon to deliver the order to his office before walking away, leaving Suyeon clearly annoyed. Later, while working, Jonghan messages Ijo and invites him to dinner at a restaurant. When Ijo arrives, he notices the restaurant is almost empty. Jonghan tells him he reserved the entire place just for the two of them. Ijo finds it a little strange, but once the food arrives, he really enjoys it. Seeing Ijo so happy makes Jonghan smile. During dinner, Ijo receives a call from Suyeon, and Jonghan tells him to answer it. On the phone, Suyeon sounds upset and asks why Ijo went out with Jonghan and even offers to come pick him up. However, Ijo politely refuses and says they'll talk later before ending the call. After overhearing the conversation, Jonghan becomes irritable and starts drinking heavily. Soon, Jonghan tells Ijo he's feeling sleepy. Ijo suggests going home, but Jonghan says he can't go back yet. Instead, they spend the night at a hotel. The next morning, both of them sleep in. When Jonghan finally wakes up, he notices Ijo sitting quietly under a blanket. Curious, he asks why Ijo is covering himself so much. When the blanket slips, Jonghan notices several marks on Ijo's neck and shoulders. Shocked, he asks if he was responsible for them. Ijo quietly nods before covering himself again. Feeling awkward, Jonghan simply tells him they should go home. Later, while Ijo is serving coffee to Jonghan and his coworkers at the company cafe, Jonghan watches him with unusually gentle eyes. Feeling embarrassed, Ijo quickly adjusts his shirt because he's worried someone might notice the marks. As Jonghan sits there watching Ijo work, he can't stop thinking about his feelings. He knows Ijo is his cousin and believes these emotions are wrong, yet he can't deny that he feels something different whenever he's around him. Then he sees Ijo smiling while talking to manager Suyeon, making him jealous once again. He realizes at first he thought everything was just a mistake, but now simply seeing Ijo with someone else makes him uncomfortable. As time passes, the two grow much closer at home and begin spending more and more time together. Jonghan takes every opportunity to stay close to Ijo, and because of that, he gradually becomes much happier than before. One day, when Jonghan comes home, he finds Ijo asleep. He quietly sits beside him, gently pinches his nose, and smiles to himself, thinking about how cute he is. Although Jonghan has always been cold and rude, he finds himself unable to hide his affection whenever he's with Ijo. Just then, Ijo reaches out, holds Jonghan's hand, and continues sleeping. In the next scene, the two are enjoying ice cream together. Jonghan notices Ijo wearing his clothes again and asks why he's been wearing them so often lately. Ijo shyly admits that he simply wanted to try them because they still carry Jonghan's scent, and he likes it. Jonghan smiles and tells him it's perfectly fine to wear his clothes anytime. Ijo happily continues eating his ice cream, but then he suddenly sneezes and accidentally drops some onto Jonghan's hand. The playful moment brings the two even closer, showing how comfortable and affectionate they have become. The two of them were lying on the bed together when Ijo asked if this was what Jonghan meant when he said he would use Ijo's body to repay the debt. Jonghan replied that it wasn't like that, so Ijo asked what kind of relationship they actually had because he had started to like Jonghan. Jonghan teased him by saying he falls in love too quickly. After that, Jonghan got up and went back to his own room to sleep, leaving Ijo feeling disappointed. While Jonghan was lying in his room, Ijo walked in and said he couldn't fall asleep alone. Jonghan agreed to let him sleep there, and when Ijo asked if he could hold him while sleeping, Jonghan agreed. As Ijo hugged him and fell asleep, Jonghan couldn't help but smile. The next day, Jonghan texted Ijo saying he would be late from work and told him to eat dinner without waiting. Ijo replied that he would also be late, so Jonghan simply said okay and returned to work. Later, some women in the office asked Jonghan if he wasn't going to get coffee from the cafe today, reminding him he would be working overtime. Jonghan replied that he didn't even like the coffee there that much and that the part-time worker had probably already gone home. The women realized he was talking about Ijo and mentioned that they had seen Ijo leaving with Suyeon. Hearing that made Jonghan even more jealous. That night, when Jong-han returned home, he immediately checked Ijo's room, but Ijo still wasn't back. He called Ijo several times, but he never answered, making Jong-han even angrier as he wondered if he was doing it on purpose. Just then, the doorbell rang. When Jung-han opened the door, he found Ijo completely drunk, with Soo-yeon helping him home. Jung-han angrily asked Soo-yeon why he let Ijo drink so much. Soo-yeon explained that he had tried many times to stop him, but Ijo refused to listen. After helping Ijo lie down on the couch, Soo-yeon prepared to leave. Watching the two together made Jung-han feel even more jealous. As Soo-yeon turned to go, Ijo grabbed his hand and drunkenly asked him not to leave him alone. Jung-han immediately asked Soo-yeon if something was going on between them. Soo-yeon calmly replied that there was no such relationship between them. Ijo tightened Ijo's hand, and Soo-yeon told him they should go to his house because he couldn't stay there. Ijo agreed, and Jung-han coldly said that Soo-yeon could take him, since the house didn't belong to Ijo anyway. Soo-yeon then left with Ijo, while Jung-han remained behind, filled with anger. The next day at the office, Jung-han saw Ijo happily chatting with several female coworkers who were praising him. Ijo smiled and greeted Jung-han, but Jung-han ignored him and walked away. Later, instead of joining everyone for lunch at the cafe, Jung-han stayed away, so Ijo texted him and invited him to meet at a restaurant. When they arrived, Ijo greeted him again, but Jung-han silently sat down without responding. Ijo told him he had already ordered food for both of them, but Jung-han said they should eat first and talk later. However, Ijo insisted on talking immediately. He asked what kind of relationship they really had because he wanted to give it a name. Jung-han replied that Ijo was being ridiculous and reminded him that they were cousins, so nothing could happen between them. Ijo couldn't believe his answer after everything they had been through together. Jung-han then harshly said that he would never fall in love with someone as crazy as Ijo, that everything had only been for fun, and that Ijo should find someone else to love. Hearing those words completely broke Ijo's heart, and he quietly continued eating while trying to hold back his tears. The next day, while Jung-han was in an important meeting, he received a message from Ijo saying that he would be moving out of the house that very day. Jung-han immediately left the meeting and rushed to the cafe to confront him. He angrily asked how Ijo could simply send a message saying he was leaving and expect him to accept it. Ijo replied that since there was nothing between them anymore, he had no reason to continue living there. He also asked Jung-han how much rent he owed because he wanted to pay everything back. Jung-han became frustrated and asked where Ijo planned to live. Ijo said he would stay at a friend's house. The argument continued until Ijo led Jung-han outside. Jung-han warned him that he couldn't leave like this and ordered him to wait at home that night. Ijo replied that Jung-han was only treating him this way because he knew Ijo loved him, but that wouldn't change anything anymore. After saying that, Ijo walked away, leaving Jung-han standing there. That night, Jung-han searched Ijo's room and realized all of Ijo's belongings were gone. Seeing the empty room made him realize how badly he had hurt Ijo, and he deeply regretted his words. The following day, while driving, Jung-han couldn't stop thinking about Ijo. Filled with regret, he finally realized that somewhere along the way, he had truly fallen in love with him without even noticing. He thought about how Ijo had become a light in his life. Eventually, he arrived at a countryside farmhouse, and the familiar road reminded him of his childhood, when he first came to the town and spent so much time with Ijo. Back then, Jung-han was depressed because his father's business had suffered huge losses, but Ijo comforted him, cheered him up, and the two of them became very close. Returning to the present, Jung-han spotted Ijo harvesting vegetables near the farm. Seeing him safe made Jung-han smile, and he quietly turned to leave, but Ijo noticed him and stopped him. The two stood there silently looking at each other for a long time before sitting down together to talk. Ijo asked why Jung-han had come and how he even knew he was there. Jung-han explained that he had taken a few days off from work because he knew Ijo would come to this place. Jung-han also asked whether Ijo's brother hadn't taken ownership of the farm. Ijo explained his brother wasn't interested because the farm wasn't profitable. Jung-han then asked if Ijo wasn't planning to come back. Ijo replied he only wanted to spend some time there to relax and remember his father before returning. He then asked why Jung-han had come all the way there only to leave without even saying hello. Jung-han admitted that he only wanted to make sure Ijo was doing okay, and after seeing him happy, he didn't want to interrupt him. Ijo then opened up about his feelings, saying his father always wanted him to be happy, but he believed he could never truly be happy and didn't deserve to be loved, which is why Jung-han could never accept him. Hearing that, Jung-han quietly stood up and started walking away. Ijo asked where he was going, and Jung-han simply replied that he was going for a walk. Ijo followed him. After a while, Jonghan asked if Ijo really loved him that much. Ijo honestly answered that he did, that he wanted Jonghan to stay, and asked if Ijo expected him to beg for love. Jonghan didn't answer and only smiled. Finally, Ijo shouted at the top of his lungs that he loved Jonghan. Jonghan looked surprised and asked what Ijo was doing. Ijo then started running, believing Jonghan would catch up after him. After running quite a distance, Ijo turned around and realized Jonghan was not there. Worried, he hurried back to look for him. Just then, Jonghan appeared, walked straight to Ijo, pulled him into a warm hug, and softly told him that he deserved every bit of happiness in the world. The next day, it was time for Jonghan to return home, but he really didn't want to leave. Before leaving, he asked Ijo when he planned to come back. Ijo smiled and said he would return in a few days and told Jonghan to go earn lots of money for him. Jonghan smiled and replied that Ijo should come back whenever he started feeling better. After saying goodbye, Jonghan returned to the city. He worked hard every day at the office, and whenever he had free time, he kept texting Ijo because he had started missing him a lot. Ijo eventually asked if Jonghan didn't have any work to do, and Jonghan jokingly replied that he was the CEO's son, so he could always make time for himself. 2 weeks passed, but Ijo still hadn't returned. Jonghan finally called him and admitted that he couldn't stand living alone anymore, asking him to come back soon. Ijo said he would return the following Friday, but Jonghan immediately asked him to come back that very Friday instead, because he had already booked a restaurant for them. Ijo agreed, making Jonghan very happy. When Friday finally arrived, Jonghan couldn't hide his excitement because Ijo was finally coming home. He confirmed that the restaurant reservation was ready before happily heading to work. His cheerful mood surprised everyone in the office, and they wondered why he looked so happy. Jonghan simply told them not to stare at him. Throughout the day, he kept sending messages to Ijo, but Ijo never replied. As time passed, Jonghan grew increasingly worried. He still arrived at the restaurant on time and waited for a long time, but Ijo never showed up. Instead, Jong-in arrived and sat across from him. Jonghan asked why he was there. Jong-in replied by asking if Jonghan was waiting for someone before insulting Ijo and speaking badly about him. Jonghan immediately asked if he had met Ijo. Jong-in admitted that he had gone to the farmhouse their father had left to Ijo and told Ijo to stay away from Jonghan and stop bothering him. Hearing that made Jonghan furious. He almost hit Jong-in, but managed to control himself. Jong-in mocked him, saying that Jonghan had only been using Ijo for fun anyway. After Jong-in left, Jonghan sat there thinking about his words. He realized they were true, because he had treated Ijo badly and always made him believe that he didn't love him. Filled with guilt, Jonghan drank heavily until a waiter informed him that the restaurant was closing. He quietly left and started walking home. On the way, he unexpectedly met Ijo. The moment Jonghan noticed the injury on his face, he became angry and assumed Jong-in must have been responsible. He immediately wanted to confront him, but Ijo stopped him and simply asked him to stay by his side. At that moment, Jonghan told Ijo that he wanted to make their relationship official. Ijo stood there in complete shock. Jonghan hugged him tightly and said that from now on, they would be together. Hearing those words made Ijo incredibly happy. After returning home, Jonghan carefully treated the injury on Ijo's face. Ijo playfully joked that a kiss would work better than medicine. Jonghan smiled and reminded him that he was injured, but he still gave him a gentle kiss. Ijo smiled back. Later, Jonghan told Ijo to get some rest because he would sleep in his own room that night. Ijo immediately asked if Jonghan didn't want to sleep beside him anymore. Jonghan explained that wasn't the reason. He simply wanted to treat Ijo properly from now on and never wanted to pressure him into anything. Ijo replied that he truly wanted Jonghan to stay with him, so Jonghan agreed and they spent the night together. The following morning, Jonghan woke up and noticed Ijo wasn't in bed. He walked outside and found Ijo cleaning the house. Jonghan took the vacuum cleaner away and told him that he didn't need to clean anymore because he would hire someone to do those chores. Confused, Ijo asked why he was saying that. Jonghan simply told him to trust him and get ready because he wanted to take him out. Ijo said he didn't feel like going anywhere, but Jonghan became a little upset and asked how long he planned to stay inside the house. After a moment of silence, Ijo finally agreed, making Jonghan smile again. They first went shopping, where Ijo tried on several outfits and showed them to Jonghan. When Ijo found a shirt he liked, Jonghan instinctively placed a hand around his waist, but Ijo quickly stepped away and quietly reminded him that people were watching. Later, they went to a restaurant for dessert. While eating cake, some cream accidentally got on Ijo's face. Jonghan reached over to wipe it away, but Ijo quickly cleaned it himself with a tissue. Even later, while watching the sunset together, Ijo still kept a little distance between them. Jonghan couldn't help but notice this unusual behavior. On their way home, Jonghan stayed unusually quiet. Ijo asked if he was upset because he hadn't let him get close earlier. Jonghan gently asked if something was bothering him and whether he no longer felt comfortable around him. Ijo immediately apologized and said that wasn't the case at all. Jonghan then stopped walking, bent down, and asked Ijo to climb onto his back. Although Ijo refused at first, he eventually agreed after Jonghan insisted. As Jonghan carried him home, Ijo apologized once again for how he had acted earlier. Jonghan smiled and told him everything was fine. Ijo responded by giving him a quick kiss on the cheek. When they reached home, Jonghan sincerely asked Ijo to give him a chance to prove his love. After thinking for a while, Ijo agreed to officially start a relationship, but made one condition. He said that if Jonghan ever hurt him again, he would end the relationship because he never wanted to experience that pain again. Jonghan accepted the condition and added one of his own, asking Ijo to promise that he would never leave home without saying anything like last time. Ijo happily agreed, and the two shared a warm hug. Later that night, while lying together, Jonghan asked Ijo about his previous relationships. Ijo simply smiled and told him that Jonghan was the most handsome person he had ever known. Jonghan jokingly asked to see photos, but Ijo refused. As they continued talking, Ijo slowly fell asleep. Watching him sleep peacefully made Jonghan smile. While looking around the room, Jonghan noticed an old photo album inside Ijo's drawer, filled with childhood pictures, and those memories brought another smile to his face. The next morning, they arrived at work together, but Ijo suggested that he should go in first so no one would become suspicious. However, Jonghan walked in beside him anyway. Ijo looked a little uncomfortable in front of everyone, but Jonghan told him not to overthink it. Just then, several female co-workers approached them and asked if they had arrived together. Ijo casually explained that they were cousins. The women laughed and said they never knew that, adding that the two of them looked really good together. Feeling shy, Ijo quickly escaped to the cafe to start working. Meanwhile, while waiting for the elevator, the same women asked Jonghan if Ijo was single. Jonghan smiled and proudly replied that Ijo was already in a relationship with someone wonderful. When they asked about his own relationship status, Jonghan smiled again and admitted that he was also in a relationship. The women jokingly complained that they were jealous of both of them, and everyone at the office started wondering why Jonghan couldn't stop smiling all day. Jonghan later texted Ijo and told him that he had already revealed to everyone that both of them were in relationships, although no one knew they were dating each other. At lunchtime, Jonghan went to the cafe with his coworkers, where the women playfully teased Ijo. Jonghan told them to go find a table because lunch was his treat. Once they were alone, Ijo quietly asked if Jonghan had really told everyone. Jonghan nodded. As Ijo reached for Jonghan's bank card to process the payment, Jonghan playfully flirted with him, making Ijo feel embarrassed. Ijo whispered for him to stop because everyone was watching. Jonghan smiled and listened, but Soo-yeon happened to notice the interaction. Later that evening, Jonghan waited outside for Ijo after work. When Ijo still didn't come out, he walked into the cafe and found him finishing his shift. Jonghan complained to Soo-yeon that employees shouldn't have to work so late. He casually placed a hand on Ijo's shoulder and guided him outside, making Soo-yeon visibly uncomfortable. Ijo also quietly told Jonghan not to do that at work. Jonghan invited him to go home together, but Ijo explained that he had already made plans to have dinner with his friends. Although Jonghan felt jealous, he forced a smile and agreed because he didn't want to seem controlling. After Ijo left, Jonghan secretly followed him and ended up at the same restaurant. From a nearby table where they couldn't see him, he watched Ijo and Soo-yeon laughing together. Soo-yeon asked Ijo why he let Jonghan control his life so much. Ijo immediately denied that and happily revealed that Jonghan and Ijo were actually in a relationship. Soo-yeon looked completely shocked and admitted that he didn't think Jonghan was the right person for him. However, Ijo smiled and defended Jonghan, saying he was actually a very kind person. Hearing those words made Jonghan realize he had been doubting Ijo for no reason. Later that night, when it was time to leave, Ijo told Soo-yeon that Jong-han was probably waiting for him at home. Jong-han quietly followed him from a distance. Along the way, Ijo stopped to smoke but realized he didn't have a lighter. Jong-han walked over, lit his cigarette, and admitted that he never knew Ijo smoked. Ijo smiled and replied that Jong-han had simply never asked. The two quietly walked home together, sharing a peaceful conversation along the way. The next day, when Jong-han arrived at the office, his senior coworkers announced that their project had been a huge success and that the company might reward the team. Everyone became excited. One of the women wondered if the reward would be a promotion or a bonus, while another coworker joked that even if they didn't know yet, they could at least celebrate with a party. They also told Jong-han to bring his cousin, Ijo, which made him smile. A little later, one of the women asked Jong-han why Ijo hadn't come to the cafe that day. Jong-han looked surprised because he had no idea. She reminded him that since they lived together, she thought he would know. She then mentioned hearing that Ijo had gone to the hospital. Hearing that, Jong-han immediately became worried and called Ijo several times, but none of the calls were answered. After work, as Jong-han was leaving the office, Jong-in showed up. Jong-han asked why he was there, and Jong-in replied that he had come to meet their uncle. Jong-han simply nodded and tried to leave, but Jong-in started mocking him, asking if he was still seeing Ijo. Jong-han said he didn't know and walked away. Downstairs, Soo-yeon happened to see the two of them together. Jong-han ignored him and left, but after Jong-in came downstairs, Soo-yeon stopped him and asked if he was Jong-in, the one who kept hurting Ijo. Jong-in laughed and said he didn't know he was that famous. He admitted that Ijo was his stepbrother. Soo-yeon demanded to know why he kept tormenting Ijo, but Jong-in replied that Soo-yeon shouldn't trust Ijo so easily because he was nothing but a liar and a cheater who was manipulating both Jong-han and Soo-yeon. Before leaving, Jong-in warned him to tell Ijo to stay away from their family. Later, Jong-han rushed to the hospital and asked the doctor what had happened to Ijo, wondering if his previous surgery had caused new complications. The doctor assured him that the surgery wasn't the problem. The scene then shifts to Jong-han and Ijo sitting together in the car. Ijo apologizes for going to the hospital without telling him, but refuses to explain the real reason. Jong-han remembers the doctor mentioning that Ijo had suffered several physical injuries. After they return home, Ijo quietly goes to his room to rest. A little later, Jong-han walks in, gently lifts Ijo's shirt, and discovers bruises all over his body. Furious, he demands to know if Jong-in was responsible. Ijo remains silent, making Jong-han even angrier. Jong-han tells him that if he just says the word, he will deal with Jong-in. However, Ijo begs him not to do anything and says that all of this is only hurting him more. Then, to Jong-han's complete shock, Ijo asks to break up. Jong-han immediately loses his temper and asks what Ijo is talking about. The two argue intensely, and in frustration, Jong-han begins throwing things around the room. Ijo rushes over, hugs him tightly, and cries, begging him to stop. Blaming himself, Ijo says that everyone suffers because of him, first his father and now Jong-han. Jong-han eventually calms down and explains that he only lost control because he couldn't handle his emotions. But Ijo refuses to change his mind about breaking up. Unable to convince him, Jong-han storms out of the house. He later meets Jae and drinks heavily. Jae repeatedly tells him to stop drinking and instead go talk to Ijo calmly. At that moment, Jong-in arrives and starts insulting Jong-han, saying he ruined his own life because of someone like Ijo who didn't deserve any of it. Jong-han angrily stares at him before asking him to step outside for a cigarette. Once outside, Jong-han completely loses his temper and attacks Jong-in. Jae quickly rushes over and pulls him away. Even then, Jong-in keeps laughing, saying that Ijo isn't worthy of anyone's love and only fools people with his innocent appearance. He even claims that Ijo has probably already found someone else. Hearing those words only makes Jong-han even angrier, but Jae finally manages to take him away. The following morning, Jong-han sits alone in his car at the office, still thinking about everything Jong-in said. Just then, his father's secretary arrives and tells him that the CEO wants to see him. Jong-han gets into his father's car, where his father scolds him for losing control of his anger after everything he had warned him about. Jong-han explains that he was caught in the middle of the conflict between the two brothers, but promises he can handle everything himself. His father angrily tells him to end his relationship with Ijo if he wants to inherit the company. However, Jong-han refuses and firmly says that he chooses Ijo instead. They continue arguing after getting out of the car, and eventually Jong-han's father slaps him, warning him not to go against him. Even so, Jong-han refuses to back down and walks away. When Junghan finally returns home, he finds Ijo waiting for him. Ijo quietly says that he stayed behind just to say goodbye. As he notices the injury on Junghan's face, he gently asks who he fought with. Junghan desperately begs Ijo not to leave him. Ijo sadly replies that Junghan doesn't truly know everything about him. Junghan answers that he already knows about his past, but none of it matters to him because he loves Ijo regardless of everything. Ijo gently explains that Junghan has a bright future ahead of him, and he doesn't want to become the weakness that ruins it. After saying that, Ijo turns around to leave. Junghan angrily shouts that if Ijo walks out now, he should never come back again. Even after hearing those words, Ijo quietly leaves. Junghan becomes completely devastated. The next day, he goes straight to the cafe and asks Suyeon if Ijo is with him. Suyeon says he has no idea where Ijo is. In desperation, Junghan even threatens to involve the police before quickly apologizing for his behavior. The two sit down and have an honest conversation. Suyeon asks Junghan if he truly loves Ijo. Junghan immediately answers yes and says he would do anything for him. Then Suyeon tells him that if he really loves Ijo, he needs to give him the freedom to make his own decisions. Otherwise, he will only become controlling instead of supportive. Junghan realizes Suyeon is right. He hands Suyeon his business card and sincerely asks him to contact him if Ijo ever reaches out, because he wants a chance to fix everything. Junghan walked outside, but his father's secretary stopped him and said he needed to talk. They went somewhere private, and the secretary revealed that Junghan's father was planning to make him a director. Hearing that reminded Junghan of what Ijo had said about having a bright future. He immediately asked the secretary if he had met Ijo. At first, the secretary refused to answer, but when Junghan started getting angry, he admitted that he had met Ijo. He explained that they made a deal. If Ijo left Junghan, they would give him money. Junghan asked if Ijo had accepted the money. The secretary said yes. He explained that first Ijo had asked for time to think, but later agreed, probably because he also wanted to see Junghan succeed. Hearing this made Junghan even more frustrated, and he told the secretary to leave. After that, he sent Ijo a message apologizing. He said he couldn't protect him and begged him to come back. Soon, Ijo replied saying that he had never slept with his stepbrother. Reading that message made Junghan smile. Many days passed, but Ijo still didn't come home. Junghan slowly became obsessed, constantly wondering when Ijo would return. One day, his phone reminded him that it was Ijo's father's Memorial Day. For the first time in many days, Junghan left the house and went to the farmhouse. During the entire drive, he could only think about Ijo. When he arrived, he waited there for a long time. After waiting without seeing Ijo, he decided to leave. But just then, Ijo finally arrived. Junghan was overjoyed. Ijo asked if he had come to visit his father. Junghan said yes, and admitted that he knew Ijo would come there too. The two of them went to the grave together and placed flowers in front of Ijo's father's grave. Ijo quietly told his father how much he missed him. Then he looked at Junghan and noticed how weak he had become. He asked if Junghan had been eating properly. Junghan admitted that he missed Ijo so much and begged him to come back. He complained that Ijo always left without saying anything. Ijo replied that he missed Junghan too, but he couldn't come back. Junghan suddenly asked, "How much money did my father give you?" Ijo answered that he would return every penny. The two started arguing again, and Ijo walked away. Junghan desperately tried to stop him. It also started raining heavily, but Ijo handed him an umbrella and left. Junghan stayed there, sitting alone in the rain, crying uncontrollably. After that, his condition became even worse. Every day, he drank heavily and kept calling and texting Ijo, begging him to return. But Ijo never replied. One day, Junghan thought Ijo had finally come back, but it was actually his friend Jae. Jae teased him and asked why Ijo had been hanging out with such a handsome guy lately, while Junghan had completely ruined himself. Confused, Junghan asked how he knew all of this. Jae laughed and explained that Junghan had been calling him every night while drunk and telling him everything. Junghan became extremely embarrassed because he thought he had been calling Ijo. Jae then told him that Ijo had recently been visiting the hospital with his new boyfriend and would probably come again the next day. Hearing that gave Junghan hope. The next day, he dressed nicely and went to the hospital. He even brought coffee for the nurses. Jae teased him again for arriving so early. Junghan pretended that he wasn't feeling well, so the nurse checked him and put him on an IV drip. While resting, he suddenly heard Ijo's name. He immediately pulled out the IV and rushed outside. He asked Ijo why he had come without telling him, then looked at Suyeon and asked if he was Ijo's new boyfriend. Suyeon got angry and asked why Junghan was interfering. He blamed Junghan for Ijo's poor health. Ijo quickly told Suyeon that Junghan didn't know anything about the situation. Then the two of them left together, making Junghan even angrier. He started wondering if someone had forced Ijo to leave him. Wanting answers, he went to meet Jung-in. Jung-in sarcastically asked if Junghan had come to beat him again. Furious, Junghan demanded to know what he had done and why Ijo had left him. Ijo laughed and claimed he had actually helped him. As Junghan was about to hit him, Ijo nervously showed him several photos. He admitted that he had shown those photos to Ijo and threatened to leak them, which would have destroyed Junghan's reputation. He confessed that he wanted Ijo to hand over the farmhouse, but Ijo never agreed and simply kept enduring the beatings. After hearing everything, Junghan immediately called the police and had Ijo arrested. Later, while looking through those photos at home, he realized how much Ijo had suffered just to protect him. Then he looked through Ijo's childhood pictures and noticed an address written on the back of one photo. It belonged to an orphanage. At that moment, Junghan finally discovered that Ijo was his uncle's adopted son and that they were not related by blood. He was completely shocked. The next day, he called the orphanage to ask about Ijo. They confirmed that Ijo had grown up there until a businessman adopted him. Junghan said he already knew his uncle had adopted Ijo, but never knew the reason. After thanking them, he ended the call. He realized that Ijo had once tried to tell him he was an orphan, but Junghan had never listened. Instead, he had falsely accused Ijo of sleeping with his stepbrother, deeply hurting him. The guilt crushed Junghan, and his health became much worse. He could only think about Ijo. One day, Ijo suddenly appeared and gently woke him up, asking if he was okay. Even after seeing Ijo, Junghan couldn't believe it and thought he was dreaming. He asked if Ijo was really there. Ijo smiled and said yes, then told him to eat the porridge he had prepared. Junghan obediently finished every bite. After giving him medicine, Ijo told him to rest. As Ijo turned to leave for his own room, Junghan grabbed his hand and asked if he wasn't staying. Ijo admitted that he wanted to stay but still had to leave. For the first time, Junghan cried openly in front of him. He begged Ijo to stay, saying he needed him and promised to protect him from everything. Ijo finally sat beside him and admitted that he had actually come back because of Junghan and that it was Suyeon who had convinced him. A flashback showed that after arguing with Junghan at the hospital, Ijo privately explained everything to Suyeon. Suyeon advised him to stop worrying about everyone else and focus on his own future, but Ijo still couldn't give up on Junghan. Suyeon smiled and told him that if he truly loved Junghan, then he should go find him and stop worrying about what the world thought. He promised to always remain Ijo's friend. Encouraged by those words, Ijo happily returned to Junghan. Hearing the truth made Junghan incredibly happy. Looking lovingly at Ijo, Junghan realized how kind his heart was. Even though Ijo wasn't his uncle's biological son, he still respected him deeply and even tried to understand his cruel stepbrother. Junghan told Ijo that he deserved all the love in the world and admitted that he already knew he was adopted. Ijo then suggested that they run away together and start a new life, but worried about Junghan's career. Junghan replied that he would continue growing alongside Ijo and asked what Ijo wanted to do in the future. Ijo said he wanted to continue his studies and get a good job. Both of them smiled happily. Ijo kissed Junghan, who jokingly warned that Ijo would catch his fever too, but Ijo didn't care, and the two shared a romantic moment together. The next day, Ijo fell sick, so Junghan cooked porridge for him. After tasting it, Ijo smiled and said that Junghan was actually the better cook, so from now on, the kitchen would be Junghan's responsibility. Junghan smiled and kissed him. In the next scene, Junghan packed his luggage into his car and went to meet Jae. Seeing the bruises on his body, Jae joked that Junghan's father must have beaten him badly. Smiling, Junghan explained that he had spent a long time convincing his father to let him stay with Ijo, and those were the injuries. He happily added that he would now be managing the company's overseas business. Jae congratulated him, but then asked if he was sure Ijo would come. Junghan didn't answer. Sitting in his car, he silently wondered whether Ijo would really choose him. At the airport, he waited nervously, afraid that Ijo might never show up. Then he suddenly felt someone running towards him. It was Ijo. He rushed over and hugged Jonghan tightly. Jonghan smiled and promised that he would leave everything behind to start a brand new life with Ijo, and that they no longer had to fear anyone. Hearing those words made Ijo incredibly happy. Finally, the story returned to their high school days, when Jonghan had visited the farmhouse during his vacation. There, he met Ijo, and the two of them hid together from the rain. Jonghan quietly admitted that he didn't want to leave, and Ijo smiled warmly before saying, "Come back during your next vacation. I'll be waiting for you." They looked into each other's eyes with endless love, as if they had always been destined to be together, and fate had finally reunited them. And with that beautiful moment, this heartwarming love story came to its happy ending.